Steelers fans, it all comes down to this. The season finale between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens. This has been the game that's been circled on our calendars ever since we got this schedule way back when we saw that these two teams were going to face off against each other at Acrisure Stadium in Week 18. We said to ourselves, this one might decide the division. Well, guess what? That's exactly the case. And today on Steelers Talk, we've got our Week 18 preview for the AFC North Championship game between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens. Now, before we get into our preview this week, make sure you guys click that subscribe button because we are doing a new subscriber battle with our Ravens channel here at Chat Sports, Ravens Rundown, and they're currently beating us, guys. They just have 6 new subscribers ahead of us, but my goal today is to pass them and to keep that lead for the rest of the week. And if we win, Trader Joey Peterson, who used to be a producer on this show and he's now the host of Ravens Rundown, owes me a steak dinner, all right? It's our usual bet. We always do a subscriber battle, and we haven't lost one yet. So I want Joey Peterson to owe me yet another steak dinner. So if you haven't already, new viewers, we're counting on you guys. The people that have already clicked that subscribe button can't help us here. It's got to be new blood, new viewers that haven't clicked that subscribe button yet. Make sure you click that subscribe button to help us beat the Ravens off the field before hopefully the Steelers beat the Ravens on the field on Sunday Night Football this weekend. So now let's get into this one, man. For the division, the AFC North Championship game here between the black and gold Pittsburgh Steelers, currently sitting at 9-7, versus the Baltimore Ravens, currently sitting at 8-8. And of course, it is going to be on Sunday Night Football. It will be the final regular season game of the 2025 NFL regular season. And man, it can't get any better than this. Okay, the winner goes on to host a playoff game next week. Obviously, that's what's going to happen if Pittsburgh wins. They get their first division championship in a half decade. They will host a home playoff game for the first time since the 2020 season. But if they lose, the season's over. So the stakes couldn't be any higher for these two football teams. The winner moves on to the postseason, and we'll get a home playoff game. Loser has to go home with their fans extremely disappointed with the way this season ended up. And of course, last year, the Baltimore Ravens ended our season in Baltimore with a crazy performance from Derrick Henry running all over the Steelers defense. Russell Wilson struggling in the first half, and a very disappointing 5th straight loss for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and an utter failure of a final 5-game stretch for the black and gold. This week, we have the opportunity to not only win the division, not only secure a home playoff game, but also to return the favor, end the Baltimore Ravens season just like they ended our season last year, and to do it in front of our home fans. But we're going to have to do it without DK Metcalf yet again. He is serving the second game of his 2-game suspension, which if you ask me, 2 games was too much. He should be playing in this football game. But unfortunately, the NFL disagreed with me and with many Steelers fans, and DK is going to have to pay the price for that physical altercation that he had with a Lions fan in Detroit a couple weeks ago. Now, to take a look back at what happened in Week 14, DK was a big part of what you were doing in that game. Over 140 yards receiving on 7 catches. He was your deep threat in that game. Rodgers had a really good performance as well with 284 yards passing and a touchdown with no picks. And not only did you shut down Derrick Henry for the most part. I mean, he had 25 carries, but on those 25 carries, he had less than 100 yards. So he actually did a pretty good job in terms of the efficiency numbers there. And then Lamar Jackson didn't have a particularly fantastic day either. Some calls certainly went the Steelers' way in that football game, but the Steelers did come out victorious by a final score of 27-22. And now we can take a look here at the Baltimore Ravens coaching and scheme breakdown, where, of course, John Harbaugh, the second longest tenured head coach in the NFL. Of course, Mike Tomlin is number 1 on this list, and Harbaugh has a record of 180-112 in his NFL career being a head coach. And on offense, Todd Monken is their offensive coordinator. They run a modern pro spread offense, and then Zach Orr is their defensive play caller, who runs a big nickel defense inspired by Mike McDonald. And the big question for Baltimore in this game, from an injury perspective, because they're relatively healthy at this point in the year, the big question, though, is will Lamar Jackson, who's dealing with a back contusion, play for Baltimore in this season finale. And, if he can't go, which looks like it's at least a possibility at this point, Tyler Huntley would be the starting quarterback for Baltimore. But even if Huntley has to play, guys, it's far from a guaranteed victory for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Huntley's coming off a very good performance versus the Green Bay Packers with an 80% completion percentage and a touchdown with a very good passer rating. He used his legs very effectively, moved the chains on 3rd and long quite well as well. So even if Lamar Jackson can't go this week, Snoop Huntley is certainly somebody that the Steelers defense will have to worry about. But really the big person that you got to take advantage of here and you got to really shut down is Derrick Henry, as we can take a look here at the Ravens offense. And Derrick Henry is their main piece at this point in the season, coming off a 200-plus yard performance against the Green Bay Packers. But, of course, Lamar Jackson, their superstar quarterback, then Ronnie Stanley at left tackle, Andrew Voorhees as their left guard, Tyler Linderbaum, one of the better centers in the league. And you got Daniel Falele, who had a terrible football game in Baltimore the last time these two teams collided. And then Roger Rosengard in their right tackle. At the skill position, they got Zay Flowers as their number one receiver. He killed this Steelers secondary back in Baltimore in Week 14. D-Hop as their number 2 guy, and then Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely. They like to use multiple tight ends in this Baltimore offense. They have for years. And then you look at the defense here, and honestly, they don't have a great pass rush. Draymond Jones and Kyle Van Noy, their 2 top edge rushers, with Travis Jones and John Jenkins on the interior for them. This is a group that doesn't get a ton of pressure. They kind of have to blitz quite a bit to get pressure on the quarterback, and we saw Aaron Rodgers have lots of time in the pocket the last time these two teams played back in Week 14. But then the off-ball linebackers, Roquan Smith is one of the best off-ball backers in the National Football League, all-pro caliber player. And then Trenton Simpson has replaced Teddy Buchanan as the other off-ball linebacker. Buchanan has been their starter for most of the season, but he suffered, I believe, a torn ACL, and he's out for the season. Then we get to the secondary here. This is a pretty good secondary, though. You got Nate Wiggins and Marlon Humphrey, a legitimate cornerback duo. Wiggins is a 4.2 speed guy, so there's certainly a lot of speed from him. Then Kyle Hamilton is an excellent nickel player, and you got to know where he's on the field at all times, whether he's lined up in the box, in the slot, out deep. He is their defensive chess piece, and when they go to their defensive rotations post-snap, he's usually the guy that's traveling the most distance. So keep your eye on Kyle Hamilton throughout this game, and then Alohi Gilman and Malachi Starks are their 2 starting safeties. Now, still to come here on the Week 18 preview for Steelers versus Ravens. Keys to victory versus the Ravens that the Pittsburgh Steelers must abide by if they want to come away with the W this week and earn themselves another week here in the 2025 season and get themselves to the playoffs. Then we'll get into my scouting report on Lamar Jackson and why I'm not too worried about Lamar Jackson, even if he plays in this ball game. And then, of course, I've got my score prediction for Steelers versus Ravens coming up at the end of this preview, so make sure you guys stick around to the end of today's show. But before we get into the rest of this week's preview, let's have a word from our sponsor today at Prize Picks, and it is the holiday season, guys, and in my opinion, it's the best time of the year to be a sports fan. Bowl games, basketball matchups, playoff pushes, it's all happening all at once, and it's all happening right now. And while all that action is going on, there's one place where it feels so good to be right, and that's Prize Picks. Prize Picks is super simple to play. Just pick more than or less than on at least 2 player stat projections, and if you get your picks right, you could cash in. My favorite feature about Prize Picks is that how you play is up to you. If you want a little bit more flexibility, you can choose the flex play where you can get paid even if one of your picks misses. And if you're feeling particularly strong about your lineup and want a bigger payout, you can go for the power play. No matter how you play, though, Prize Picks is a great way to put your takes to the test and make some money. That is, if you know ball. For my lineup here for Steelers versus Ravens this weekend, I'm taking the less on Aaron Rodgers passing yards, the less on rushing yards for Derrick Henry, and the more on rushing yards for Jaylen Warren. You guys can download the Prize Picks app today and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. My first key to victory versus Baltimore here and to lock in an AFC North Championship and a home playoff game this year, you got to contain King Henry. I think that this might be the biggest X factor in the game that might decide the game is how well does Derrick Henry play? Because last week he went off over 200 yards versus the Green Bay Packers. They gave him the ball 36 times and he averaged 6 yards a carry and got 4 touchdowns, one of the more insane stat lines from any running back in the NFL season this year. And, that momentum heading into this game certainly doesn't make Steelers fans, feel warm and fuzzy inside, all right? Especially because last year in the 2 final games that the Steelers played against Baltimore, Derrick Henry ran all over them. And ever since Derrick Henry signed with Baltimore, if the Ravens have beaten the Steelers, it's because Derrick Henry was the main reason why. You guys can take a look at the 2 times the Steelers have lost to the Ravens when they've had Derrick Henry on the team. Week 16 of last season, and then also in the wild card round, where you guys can see, man, absolutely destroyed us. Multiple long runs, heavy workloads, high rush averages, and of course he had the 2 touchdowns in the wild card game. So I'm not all that worried about the quarterbacks. I'll tell you why here in just a second. I'm worried about Derrick Henry. But back in Week 14, the Steelers actually did an okay job against him. They gave him a lot of run, 25 carries. He got 94 yards. So on 25 carries to keep a guy under 100 yards on the day, that's pretty good. That's just a 3.8 average. That's not terrible, but that's not phenomenal. And he didn't get into the end zone that entire football game. And by the way, that was without Derrick Harmon. Derrick Harmon is going to be back for this matchup, and he's been back the last 2 weeks. And this Steelers run defense has played phenomenally since Harmon has returned. They only give up 15 rush yards versus Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, Sonic and Knuckles, back in Week 16 in Detroit for an average of just 1.3 yards per carry. And then last week against Cleveland, another good performance, giving up less than 80 rush yards and about 3 yards a carry. So this Steelers run defense is turning a corner at the right time. And by the way, even in the game before Harmon returned against the Miami Dolphins, Devon Achane didn't get a phenomenal performance in that game either. So the Steelers' run defense over the last 3 weeks has been awesome, which makes me think that the Steelers' run defense is going to keep this team in the ballgame and at least keep King Henry from absolutely dominating and running away with the division. But now let's get to the quarterbacks. And what the Steelers need to do is just get after him, all right? Because in my opinion, Lamar Jackson, even if he plays, there's a decent chance he doesn't play well, all right? And frankly, this season he has not been fantastic. And I think if he plays this week, guys, not only is Lamar not going to have a ton of practice time, I kind of doubt he practices all that much this week. So that's going to provide a competitive advantage for the Steelers. But also he's going to be playing injured, and there's going to be questions as to how well he can rotate. I mean, he plays a rotational position, and he's dealing with a back contusion, and then also, is he going to want to run as much as he usually wants to run with this injury? But honestly, man, Lamar's dealt with a lot of different injuries this year, from a hamstring injury to a knee issue to an ankle issue. Now he's dealing with a back issue, and, even when he was playing with those previous injuries, he hasn't been himself this year. He just hasn't. You take a look at his numbers this year, and usually we're used to seeing Lamar in the top 5 in every one of these categories. This year, he's only top 5 in yards per attempt, and everything else, he's either league average or, in some areas like on target percentage, big time throw percentage, average time to throw, pressure to sack rate. He is way down in the dumps this year. And he just hasn't been the same player dealing with all these injuries this season. Plus, Lamar traditionally doesn't play well against the Pittsburgh Steelers defense. Like we talked about, yeah, he was able to beat the Steelers twice at the end of last season, but that's because he could just ride the coattails of Derrick Henry running for as well as he was running in those football games, right? Lamar played fine in those 2 football games, but he wasn't the reason why Baltimore was winning. If the Pittsburgh Steelers make Lamar Jackson be the reason why they win this football game, my guess is the Steelers will win it, because you look at Lamar's numbers in his career versus the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they are not great, all right? Under 60% completion percentage, under 7 yards per attempt. He has more interceptions than touchdowns, and his quarterback rating is below a 75. So he has not done a great job against the Pittsburgh Steelers defenses in the past, and this Steelers defense is playing its best football of the season over the last month. They have played really good ball here over the last 4 weeks, and Lamar, coming off an injury, probably barely practicing and playing hurt, I just don't see how he outperforms himself in what he did back in Week 14. He did have 2 total touchdowns, but he did throw a pick as well. And, his completion percentage in that game was lower than his career average against the Pittsburgh Steelers at just 54.3. So, personally, I'm not that afraid of Lamar Jackson if he plays. I still think Lamar probably gives them the better chance to win compared to Tyler Huntley. But Lamar is not somebody that I am, petrified of if he plays in this ball game. The guy you got to stop is King Henry. But then another guy that you do have to stop in this game is Zay Flowers, because he was the guy in the passing game in Week 14 that was killing you. He had over 120 yards receiving on 8 catches. Averaged over 15 yards per catch. He was their chunk guy, and he was the guy that was getting the 20-plus yard completions very consistently, and he was the guy creating separation. And Flowers is a really good player, but the Steelers got to have a good game plan against him, maybe even double-teaming him at times in big moments to make sure he doesn't wreck this game for the Pittsburgh Steelers defensively. But now we get to the other side of the ball, on offense. And for me, guys, I've been saying it all season long. I'm going to continue this message until it gets into Aaron Rodgers and Arthur Smith's brain that we got to run the football more. This is a running football team, and the strength of this team is the 2 running backs we have, Jaylen Warren and Kenny Gainwell, and the offensive line. All right, you got to run the football, and especially with DK Metcalf out, if Pittsburgh can run it a lot in this game and they can just run it right down the throats of the Ravens, they should. Now, keep in mind, they didn't have a great rushing performance the last time they played against the Ravens. I think they had like 34 total rush yards against the Ravens last time that they played. Back in Week 14, but with a guy like Jaylen Warren and Kenny Gainwell, man, you got to try and get these guys going, especially when your wide receiver room is as bereft of talent as it is right now. But in terms of the passing game, the 2 guys that, in my opinion, should be the primary reads on most plays is Adam Thielen and Pat Freiermuth. These guys are your most impactful players that are currently in your pass-catching group, and we've seen it with Pat Freiermuth, who had a bunch of seam shots thrown his way in the 2-minute drill last week. We saw it with Thielen, where he caught multiple 3rd and long conversions against Detroit. All right, I thought on film these 2 guys were the most open consistently, but for some reason Rodgers was looking at MVS and Scotty Miller more. Like, no, you want to go to Adam Thielen and Pat Freiermuth. Those guys should be the main weapons in terms of the short and intermediate game for the Steelers this week. But then also, I do expect Baltimore to be very, very aggressive, which means you will have to hit some deep shots on them, all right? With the way that the wide receiver room is currently configured, with DK Metcalf out of the lineup, the Ravens are probably going to come into this game with a strategy of, we're going to force these guys to throw the ball down the field. And that was their same exact strategy that they played the last time that we played the Baltimore Ravens. And, we had DK Metcalf the last time we played them, and, we saw what happened. He had over 140 yards receiving. Rodgers had one of his best days of the season, but you're not going to have Metcalf, the X factor in that last game, this week at Acrisure Stadium. So Pittsburgh is going to see a lot of aggressive looks again. I would expect to see a lot of blitzing. I would expect to see a lot of press man coverage, and you got to trust some of these receivers on the outside to win. And on occasion, you got to throw that deep shot and hit it in order to keep this Baltimore defense at bay and kind of keep them honest. And somebody needs to step up as a deep threat, because Adam Thielen is not that. He's a slot guy. Pat Freiermuth obviously is not that. He's more of a slot guy as well from the tight end position. So one of these 4 guys, or multiple of them, have to step up in a big way and hit at least a couple of downfield shots to kind of put the fear of God a little bit in the Baltimore Ravens defense and, force them to play back a little bit more, all right? And whether that's Marquez Valdes-Scantling finally figuring it out, or Calvin Austin III, who's got awesome speed, Roman Wilson, who also has awesome speed and has shown throughout the year that he can stack corners on go balls, or Scotty Miller, who's another deep threat kind of guy. One, at least, of these guys needs to step up if the Steelers is going to win this game and have a good day offensively in terms of the passing game. And honestly, if I'm picking one of these guys to be the surprise guy that, all of a sudden has the big game, I would say it's Roman Wilson. Now, they have to put him out on the field. They're not doing that right now. But if I would trust one of those guys, I would say the guy on film that has gotten open on go balls and posts the most this year, it would be Roman Wilson. All right, now when he got open on those plays, Rodgers and Mason Rudolph failed to hit him multiple times, but that's not on Roman Wilson, right? Roman has run good go balls this year. So if you're looking for somebody as an alert option, if you're looking for somebody to be that, that deep ball guy, for me, I would go with Roman Wilson, but something tells me that Arthur Smith and Aaron Rodgers are going to put their faith in MVS to play that role, and because of that, Marquez Valdes-Scantling might be a big X factor in this football game, which scares the crap out of me because MVS has a couple of decent catches in the few weeks that he's been here with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he's been getting actual starting reps. It just hasn't been that great. So I'm hoping this is the week that MVS finally has his breakout game. But then also, the Steelers need to win the turnover battle, in my opinion. All right, in this game, without DK Metcalf, all these different things. I mean, the Steelers won the turnover battle last week and still lost. All right, so if you lose the turnover battle in this game, I think your chances of winning the game go down to close to zero. You have to win or at least tie the turnover battle to have a chance in the fourth quarter. And then when the fourth quarter comes, guys, and I do think it's going to be a classic Steelers-Ravens kind of matchup where it's going to be close to the very end. It's going to be a nail-biter. It's going to come down to which team makes the play late, which team gets the stop on defense, which team makes the final drive to get the game-winning field goal or touchdown, who makes the special teams play. There's going to be a play that needs to be made in the fourth quarter. Which team is going to make it? If the Steelers make it, they'll win. If they don't make it, they will lose. And guys, this is exactly why you signed Aaron Rodgers in the offseason. This is why you waited for Aaron Rodgers in the offseason, because he's got the experience in these big games, in the cold, all right? And this is a playoff environment. Win or go home. This is the type of game that you brought in Aaron Rodgers for, and this is without question an Aaron Rodgers legacy game in terms of his tenure with the black and gold. We can take a look at the points per game trends for this game, and unfortunately the trends do predict a very slight, super slight Ravens victory. It's like 0.3 is like the difference between the cross-referenced points per game on offense and defense between these two teams. But they do give the slight advantage to the Baltimore Ravens. But keep in mind that it is super tiny of a difference, and with the Steelers being home, that could give them just the little push needed to get them over the top. But I fully expect this one to be going right down to the wire in the fourth quarter. And I'm going to pick the Pittsburgh Steelers to win. I'm going to pick them to win. I didn't feel too great on Sunday, but after breaking down this entire matchup, I think the Steelers' run defense has been excellent the last 3 games. I think they're going to be able to at least bottle up Derrick Henry, and I don't think the quarterback play is going to be all that great for Baltimore. But then on the other hand, I don't really expect the Steelers offense to light it up either. I think it's going to be a very classic AFC North, low-scoring type of affair, a defensive football game. And I just think the Steelers probably put together one drive in the fourth quarter to take a lead. And then, either that ends the game or the defense makes a stop. Either way, I think the Steelers win this game by a close margin, 17-13, and they win the AFC North Division here in 2025. So it's your turn. Let me know down there in the comments section. Predict the score of Steelers versus Ravens for the season finale this week. For me, I'm going 17-13. Steelers win. Let me know your take down there in the comments section. And make sure you guys join us for our watch party this week. We will be going live 2 hours before the game kicks off on Sunday evening. And obviously the season is on the line, so we're going to be having a bunch of great Super Chat promotions, and we're going to have a great pregame show for you guys, getting you ready for the game itself, live play-by-play and reaction and analysis to the game itself, and then, of course, post-game reaction. Hopefully we're celebrating a division championship and a home playoff berth. But if we lose, of course, we'll have our end-of-season reaction on that show as well. So make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you love in-depth Steelers content like we provided for you guys today on the preview, make sure you guys click that subscribe button because we provide that content every single day right here on Steelers Talk.